here's the thing. The season premieres May 30th on ESPN. Huge platform, right? And we still don't have a booking between the coaches, which has pretty much been 95% of the way through the run of The Ultimate Fighter since 2005, the coaches fight. All UFC president Dana White could say this past weekend when asked about it was, I don't know. He doesn't know what the holdup is. That was his quote. And that the UFC would, quote, will still be working to put the fight together, working hard to put the fight together, end quote. How important, guys, is it for McGregor and Chandler to fight each other? And are you starting to get concerned at this point? Dan Tom, it's on you.
You know, it's interesting. I really wasn't a big fan of the JDS and potential Brock Lesnar matchup, but I got to imagine that fits in that 5% aisle. That George there kind of listed off as far as the minority of matches that don't happen. This one, though, it would be safe to say I think it would be disappointing for a bunch of people, even hardcores who are kind of like, all right, what's McGregor up to now? Even if you have that kind of jaded attitude, I think you would still rather see them fight than not. That is kind of troubling. I'm not a big Ultimate Fighter fan. You guys know this. I haven't really watched since the last one was Tough 10, the heavyweights. But you think about the memorable seasons like Tough 7. You had the title fight with Rampage and Forrest Griffin to look forward to. Tough 5 and I believe Tough 4. You had great revenge themes. Whether they were for titles or not. In Pulver and Penn's case, but Sarah and Hughes maybe with the George St. Pierre looming in the wings there. You always had these narratives. And if you don't really have that, as well as we're putting it behind the paywall, right, which was kind of opposite with the effect and the intended effect of the Ultimate Fighter, let's get people seeing it, not put things behind paywalls. That really makes things really interesting. I did not realize that until this last week that there was issues with the matchup.
Yeah, most definitely, man. Look, another thing is not just the matchup getting put together, but I think the holdup here is USADA Conor needing to get back into the testing pool, and then there's a period where we have to wait, which is going to be far past the last episode that airs sometime in August. Conor McGregor's talked about exemptions existing, which I think in the small print can happen, but it sounds like USADA does not want it to happen. And Dana White threw it back at USADA. He said, whatever they say, and USADA made a statement that says, we don't want that to happen. So that's where it really, really is starting to get tricky. Goes, weigh in.
Look, I've never really had a problem with Tough. I used to enjoy the show a lot more. It's just different. Before I used to tune in for the talent. I used to tune in for the fights. But with all these other organizations that have popped up and Dana White's Contender Series, it seems like the level of talent is kind of diminished a little bit here and there. So right now for me, it's all about the coaches. I want to know who's coaching and I want to see them interact. It's what helps sells the fight at the end. But if you have no fight, and if there's so many question marks surrounding the fight, then it's going to be difficult for me to sit here and watch this and take everything these guys are saying seriously. Because if I know that there's going to be no payoff in the end, well, then what am I doing here, right? It's kind of like watching Twitter when people are arguing on Twitter. If you knew they were going to meet somewhere and fight, you'd probably be more tuned into what it is they're saying, right? Word for word. If you don't have this type of payoff. And the crazy thing for me too, guys, is the details surrounding the payoff, right? What weight class? Like, come on, man. I don't want to see this at welterweight. Michael Chandler's not a welterweight. He's a lightweight. Have this fight at lightweight. If you tell me this fight's going to happen, it's going to happen at lightweight. I am all in on this, dude. Conor McGregor must see TV, right? The UFC knows what they're doing. They probably paid him a pretty penny to have him there. So I imagine there's got to be something happening. The UFC is a smart organization. I think they're not going to let this one go. But you need to tell us now, because if you don't, we're going to be watching a show that's not really going to make much sense to us. Michael Chandler, I know everybody talks about Conor McGregor and the intensity and all that. Michael Chandler, man, we've known him for a while. He can get that way too. So this show can probably be massively entertaining. But if you don't have the promise of the payoff at the end, it's just going to feel different. It's going to feel like a letdown.
All right. The chat is weighing in. KC Chiefs 081 says, let's be honest, Conor isn't going to fight again. Damn. Me Diamond 44 says, can't even get him to commit to this fight. And then Me Diamond also says he wants the knockout record. LOL, never gonna happen. What a joke. Shout out to Matt Brown, by the way, who tied the knockout record, and he might even stick around long enough to break the record. So big shout out to him. 42 years old, still doing his thing. All right, Danny, what are your thoughts here, man? Are you like this on May 30th on ESPN tuning in, or you got
Look,
something to do?
I think people are going to tune in regardless. I think it's going to be probably the most successful views wise, or one of the, just because Conor McGregor's in it. Let's be honest. Conor McGregor does anything and people are watching. We know it from the site. You write an article with Conor McGregor in the headline, all of a sudden you're getting extra clicks. So people are going to watch, whether there's a fight at the end or not. People are going to watch. Let's not forget, he also did the Ultimate Fighter in the past against Uriah Faber, and the two never fought. And that was still a very exciting season, and people were tuning in and very much looking forward to it. We're here for the Conor banter. We're here for the back and forth. We're here for the witty lines, that Irish accent, the madness. But of course, it does sweeten it up if we know there is some stake on it, and they're going to be fighting at the end of the season. Of course it is, but I still suspect people are going to tune in. This is going to be a successful season, whether Conor fights Michael Chandler or not. As far as whether the fight is going to happen or not, I do have my doubts. And the more time passes, the more those doubts grow, because we've seen Conor McGregor stands on Twitter regarding USADA and what he may or may not be doing, because he's very ambiguous about the details. But we can suspect that he might not be adhering currently to the USADA rules. I don't know who's going to give in, right? We've seen certainly in certain scenarios, Conor McGregor, Brock Lesnar get an exemption and this and that, and things getting moved around for superstars. Could that be the case for Conor McGregor? Time will tell. I suspect that eventually something's got to give, and I think it'll probably favor McGregor. That's just the trend of everything. If you're a superstar and you sell pay-per-views, you usually get your way one way or the other, right? Maybe not everything, but a good chunk of it. So I think Conor McGregor does come back. I do expect him to see him in the octagon in 2023. Under what circumstances, we'll see. If it's against Chandler, I'm not sure. But I do have questions whether this fight is going to happen or not. Just look at both these guys' Instagram. Michael Chandler's out there, dragging sleds, throwing medicine balls. McGregor, just do a quick search on Twitter. A lot of Proper 12 and the casinos, drinking this, that. Somebody looks like they're getting ready for a fight, the other isn't. So I do have doubts that this bout may not happen, this specific matchup. So we'll see. A lot up in the air right now.
Yeah. And Conor McGregor, when you think about it, he's holding Michael Chandler hostage right now. He has all of the cards, and Michael Chandler's not getting any younger. He's usually very, very active. So for him to have to sit back and wait for arguably the biggest paycheck he's ever going to see, you probably have a longer leash. You'll probably wait a little bit longer. It is Conor McGregor, but how long? Like, how long do you want to be out of the business, not making a paycheck? Conor McGregor is holding Michael Chandler hostage. He's holding the UFC hostage. This is getting crazy, man.
He's even saying, shout out to Ken for mentioning it, but I saw another trailer where he even says 185, and he told Chandler, "You'll do what you're told." I don't know if you guys have seen that one. That's getting out there. Look, I've seen McGregor do the 170 thing. He's got the juice to just call his shots. Him and Nate have done 170, but he wants to come back to title fights. And if you want to come back to title fight, I think Dana White should stick to his guns and say, you got plenty of time. Both of you cats need to get to 155. You have a shorter leash to get to the title shot. At least work with me there, right, guys?
I do agree with you guys. I think Ghost made an excellent point in saying that, at least in my opinion, like if he comes back at 170 and fights Chandler at 170, there is going to be that feel of like, okay, we're now just into money fights. I do not see him fighting for the belt at 170. I don't like his chances. He'll get demolished. 155, I think they're still tough, but there's a more realistic path where I go, okay, he can beat Chandler. Maybe he gets another one fighting for the belt. That's not a crazy idea. And that's exciting, right? Maybe seeing him back on top with the title. That is way more exciting than just, fights that are just big but don't really have much meaning. So I do agree. It's got to be 155.
Dan?
I think I'll just say that I think if it is 155, he's going to do the same flexing that, George alluded to. Because I think usually that's done more, on fight week, right? Boha Chinia, Marvin Vettori, for example, where is he trying to mess with Marvin, or is there something legitimately wrong? Or is it both? And he's just trying to parlay one into the other. So if it gets set to 155, expect Conor to change it to 170 to fight week. If it gets set at 170, which I think is the more realistic, though I don't want it. I agree with everybody else. It should be at 55. But if it gets set to 170, I still wouldn't be surprised if it happens at 175. And before we move on, I just got to say, I forgot to say this, but on this very show, guys, when this first got announced, I was on the panel and you guys asked me for predictions. And I think I was the only person I predicted the fight wasn't going to happen. And of course, I parlayed that into a semi-joke, which it's not really a joke. You guys just mentioned, I mean, Conor's kind of still doing Conor things, but I made the joke that, you know, we could kind of get a Smashing Machine documentary. I don't want to repeat the joke. Obviously, last time I was here, we still have a lot of chatters and stuff that are very upset about jokes. So don't want to make anybody cry or hurt that crowd over there. But yeah, if it doesn't happen, I think we do need to pull that clip and give me some credit, because I did kind of call for this.
And by the way, that Netflix video comes out, right? McGregor's thing is coming out this week, I think.
Yeah, but listen. You get two documentaries. Doesn't matter what they're about. You got to have the downfall, right? Because the downfall sets up the comeback. Everybody loves a comeback story. Come on, you can hear McGregor's managers. Like, they're clearly not talking about fighting and competing, you know, being a good Samaritan. We're talking about money here. That's his game. So I really would not be surprised for more Netflix documentaries, whether they're of his producing or not.
Somebody mentioned Dustin in the chat room, and he hasn't fought since he beat Chandler, and he owns wins over Chandler and McGregor. So I don't think anything gets past him in terms of this having anything to do with title stakes. That's for sure.
The Dustin McGregor rivalry is over. It's done with.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Does Dustin turn down a fourth fight? Would Dustin turn down a fourth fight, and would Chandler walk away from this one? Because it'd be a power move for Chandler to go, you know what? I'm not waiting for him. I'm taking another fight. But is the payday so immense that these guys are held hostage a little bit by the Irishman? Yeah. What do you guys think?
Yeah, it's career changing. I think if Dustin could fight him 10 times, he would. But like, I'm just speaking as a consumer, no appetite for it. Done with that.
Yeah, I agree. You know, series is done 2-1, but let's be honest, with all the iterations of boxing and celebrity boxing, there will be 10 fighters with their own promotions by the time Nate Diaz or Dustin Poirier cash that Conor McGregor ticket, or vice versa. Conor needs to cash it. Either way, those fights will still happen, but they'll probably happen like when they're even older and outside of their contracts and some weird boxing thing, given the trends.
Goes, you got anything to add before we move on?
Yeah, just that if anything, I would be more excited to see Conor McGregor and bare knuckle. Can you imagine if that happened?
Oh my God, I forgot about that.
Honestly, I think he'd probably do well.
I actually think he would because he's got the speed and he's got enough power. But
big hands, yeah. And his thing has been cardio, right? Like he was doing well against Dustin until he wasn't. These 2-minute rounds?
Mm-hmm.
2-minute rounds, yeah, I mean, 5 of them, 10 minutes.
Yeah,
total.
you don't need to have. You just need to know how to sprint, and McGregor can do that. He's not a marathon.
Exactly. There's no wrestling. You know the worries he had with Habib. There's no jiu-jitsu, getting strangled by Nate Diaz. The leg injury. Well, there ain't no kicking going on over here. And yes, the cardio. That's why I think he was bouncing around over there in Colorado. I think he was actually thinking to himself, "Man, I got to get a piece of this." He really looked like he genuinely thought I could be here one day. Of course, he's tied down to the UFC, but as we've seen, there's been more people figuring out ways to just get out of their contract. I don't know what Conor's is. I imagine he signs a new one each time and then negotiates each time as well, but I think he's pretty much locked in.
I think Dan is onto something with what he said about the promotions. I saw that look in Conor McGregor's eyes at BKFC, man, and if he ever gets out of that UFC contract, I think he becomes part owner of BKFC or starts his own BKFC, and then that's going to be one of the next steps, man. But he looked really, really comfortable and happy there.
Dude, I think Dana White should just get rid of slap fighting and buy BKFC, honestly, and make it part of this umbrella. They got surfers, skateboarders. There's something going on with BKFC that I think he can capitalize on. It's some of his stars that are providing some of the best highlights for BKFC. Respect to the boxers, Austin Trout, and a few of the other ones that came as well. But I'm wondering why he hasn't thought of that.
But the problem is if he gets rid of slap fight, it's going to ruin our timelines. Because right now I can't find anything on the NBA, NHL with playoffs going on, NFL. It's all slap fighting, guys. I can't find anything. It's dominating.
It's bigger than all of those sports. In fact, that one drone in Buenos Aires, Argentina, when they were showing the 5 million, I remember going, "Hey, are they all there to celebrate the slap fighting event, or what's going on?" You know? But it turns out they were there to celebrate Lionel Messi and the World Cup win. I was like, "Oh, I get it." But I got confused.
Mhm.
I wonder when Dana's gonna like pull the plug on the thing, because he just keeps doubling down, and there's gotta be a limit to that, right? Like that's gotta end at some point.
His poor employees right now who are having to shoulder this burden, because let's be honest, UFC as a whole or Dana White takes all these shells, and we often forget that there's really good people and hardworking people behind the scene that keep our entertainment afloat, something we shouldn't lose track of. And I don't think a lot of the Gen Pop realizes that these extra duties, I don't know how much extra they're getting paid for these, and the UFC schedule is already crazy enough. I feel like the UFC employees are quietly telling us to stop talking about it and to stop pissing off the boss, because he's just going to push back harder, which means we're going to have to work more. So I feel like they're secretly, they can't tell us. So if you guys do feel this way, I will speak for you. Stop talking about it so much. Just keep it down.
Blink
Keep it
twice
down.
if blink twice if you want to say anything.